Hi, welcome to our research proposal, From Screen to Self, Trend Interpretation and Personal Style on Social Media.
So, when looking at topic importance and relevance, social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok have accelerated trend cycles to the point where style is often shaped by algorithmic popularity rather than individual creativity. Instead of expressing personal identity, many users adopt trends simply because they're viral, asking themselves, do I like this or do I like this because everyone else does? And this creates a tension between authentic self expression and collective imitation. Although influencers and platforms frame fashion as a space for individuality, the content systems they operate within similar aesthetics, moving away from that creativity. This rapid trend turnover also promotes overconsumption, as users constantly buy new items to keep up with aesthetics that may only be relevant for a few weeks. While traditional fashion cycles used to last seasons, these micro trends on TikTok last for a couple of weeks. And given that social media is the main space where young people experiment with their identity, it's important to understand how fashion content shapes their sense of self. Existing research focuses heavily on influencer marketing, consumer psychology, and brand strategy. Less attention has been given to the user perspective, how individuals emotionally and socially interpret these trends. This matters also, especially for people who feel they must look a certain way to be accepted online. Now, looking at our research questions. First, how do influencers on platforms like Instagram and TikTok shape how users understand and express their fashion identity? Now, for a secondary, how do users personalize or reinterpret viral fashion trends to express their own identity? Then, what strategies do fashion influencers use to present authenticity and trend leadership on social media? And then, fourthly, how do platform algorithms and content formats influence which trends users are exposed to and how they engage with them? Lastly, do users feel pressure to engage with trends on social media, and how does this shape self expression or style experimentation? So, now going into overview of literature, specifically our key findings. In the first journal, we see that Instagram has become a major space for identity performance. Their work shows that fashion consumption on Instagram goes beyond just buying clothes. It becomes a way for users to signal belonging and status through platform driven aesthetics. Building on that, the second journal shows that influencers function as cultural intermediaries on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. Users rely on influencer and affiliate content for product discoveries, trust building, and style choices. For the third journal, it helps explain why influencer content is so powerful, as influencers act as social comparison models, meaning that what people see online directly shapes how they express their own identities. For the fourth journal, it shows the importance of visual strategies used for both luxury and fast fashion brands. Elements like logos, brand names, and hashtags significantly increase user engagement. So, all of these key findings show that Instagram and TikTok function as a visual and cultural ecosystem where influencers, brands, and users co create fashion, meaning, and identity signals.
Now, going over the research gap and conceptual framework. In our fifth literature review, the article highlights that even though ethical guidelines are commonly discussed in theory, many qualitative studies, especially with digital and social media data, fail to consistently apply these principles in practice, revealing a clear gap between ethical theory and real world research execution. The authors position research ethics as a conceptual framework that must guide the entire research process, including design, data collection, analysis, and reporting, not just the consent phase, reinforcing ethics as a foundational structure, not a procedural afterthought. In our sixth literature review, the article defines purposive sampling as the intentional selection of units such as individuals, cases, or events based on their relevance to the research question, and argues that it is particularly suited for qualitative or mixed methods research when one aims for a deep understanding of a complex topic. However, the authors point out a gap in the literature. Although purposive sampling is widely used, its historical development, theoretical justification, and methodological limitations remain underexplored, especially when applied to newer research contexts such as digital media or social media studies. In our seventh literature review, This article examines the socio-psychological motives that drive consumers to follow influencers, placing particular emphasis on motivational factors and purchasing frequency. It identifies four key motives: authenticity, consumerism, creative inspiration, and envy, and demonstrates how these motivations shape buyer behavior. However, this study does not address how these same factors influence a user's self-understanding of personal style. A gap remains in understanding how users interpret influencer fashion choices and use them to conduct their own sense of style. This gap connects to our research project as it highlights the need for semi-structured interviews and a qualitative approach to bridge the gap between motivations and how influencers contribute to their personal fashion development and perception, not just their buying habits. In the eighth literature review, the article offers good insight on conceptual framework because it provides strong secondary research on how influencer content shapes followers' self-concept, emotional responses, and identity formation. Although our project focuses specifically on how influencers influence users' self-understanding of personal fashion style, the article emphasis on materialism highlights broader psychological processes that align with our research goal. This research also follows a qualitative approach, much like ours. Its findings reveal that influencers' lifestyle functions as a symbolic model, eliciting emotions such as admiration, envy, and longing while attaching social meaning to material objects. These symbolic interpretations ultimately shape the consumption patterns and personal identity, making the article a relevant and supportive source for our conceptual understanding of how influencers' content impact users' fashion identity and self-perception.
This study uses qualitative research design because our goal is to understand how social media users interpret fashion content and connect it to their own sense of style. This research design allows for personal conversation, resulting in firsthand direct data. Rather than measuring behavior numerically, we want to explore how users reflect meaning through their personal experiences. A 30 to 40 minute long, semi-structured interview allows us to gather rich, detailed responses while still keeping a consistent structure across participants. All interviews will be conducted over Zoom to ensure accessibility and convenience. These interviews will break down the process that users go through when interpreting these social media posts and how it influences their style and fashion choices. Participants may also be asked to share specific posts, influencers, or outfit inspiration during the interview. Using visual examples allows for deeper reflection and more accurate response about how digital fashion affects personal identity. This study will include between 15 and 20 Instagram and TikTok users ages 18 to 30. This age group is especially relevant because they engage most heavily with social media and digital fashion culture, and they are also in the same, if not similar, generation, being Gen Z and millennials. We will use purposive sampling, meaning participants must actively follow fashion creators, post outfit content, or engage with social media hashtags relating to fashion. Purposive sampling works best for this study because it intentionally selects social media users who actively engage with fashion content, ensuring participants are highly relevant to the research question. Recruitment will occur through university networks and social media posts. This ensures that all participants have direct experience with the phenomenon being studied. To ensure trustworthiness and to strengthen it, we will use three strategies. First, member checking. This allows participants to review summarized findings for accuracy. Second, reflective journalings that helps researchers reflect on personal bias. And third, triangulation. This compares interview responses with brief observations of participants. To reach ethical goals, informed consent will be needed first, as well as an explanation of the aim of the study and issues concerning confidentiality and anonymity. In order for information to be confidential and anonymous, all information must be handled and stored in accordance with the Data Protection Act. No party other than the researcher and, if applicable, the research team members should have access to the data. Pseudonyms and encrypted data will be directly used to identify subjects and will be stored separately from data which is primarily needed for scientific analysis. This ensures that all participants' private information is protected and kept confidential. Participants will have the right to withdraw at any time from the interview process. The study may be low risk due to the nature and the topics involved, but it is still important to ensure that every point of data being collected is anonymous because social media and personal interviews are involved, which, yes, does require an IRB approval.
Next, I'll be walking through our data collection and analysis plan for this project. We're using a qualitative approach that relies entirely on semi-structured interviews. This method is best fit for our research because we're interested in people's lived experiences and how they interpret influencer content and how it shapes their fashion identity. To deepen these insights, we're also including an optional artifact component where participants can share saved posts, screenshots, or their own outfit photos if they feel comfortable. This gives us a closer look at the real content influencing their style. With consent, we'll record audio or audio plus screen if they choose to show us content and if the interview is over Zoom. Before beginning, each participant receives a clear informed consent statement. And our interview guide covers topics like platform usage, the influencers they follow, how they interpret trends, how influencer content affects their style or self expression, and whether they've felt influence without realizing it. For analysis, we're using reflexive thematic analysis based on Braun and Clark. We start with open coding, highlighting key ideas, color coding, and identifying initial concepts. Then we move into axial coding, where we look for relationships across participants, such as repeated influencers, shared aesthetics, or similar reactions to promotional content. From there, we group these ideas into broader themes that help us explain how social media influences fashion identity. Overall, this approach gives us rich, detailed insight into how young people understand and express their fashion identity through TikTok and Instagram.
Our timeline demonstrates that this research project is both realistic and feasible within a 10-week schedule. This is the entire plan. In the first week and the second week, we will conduct phase 1, which is the proposal. This is where we will finalize the research topic, refine the primary and secondary research questions, justify our chosen methodological approach, prepare a detailed qualitative design using semi-structured interviews, and compile supporting literature that offers a theoretical grounding. During this phase, we will also write the ethics statement for our participants. By the end of week 2, a complete proposal package will be submitted to the IRB. Phase 2, IRB approval. This will typically take 2 weeks, although our study examines perceptions of fashion and style, which is a minimal risk research study, so we anticipate a relatively quick turnaround. With a complete detailed submission, we expect IRB approval within 2 weeks. Now for phase 3, recruitment. Once approval is granted, we will begin recruiting 15 to 20 Instagram and TikTok users aged 18 to 30 using propositive sampling through university networks and targeted social media posts. We expect recruitment to take approximately 5 to 7 days. During this period, participants will receive full informed consent materials, review the study information, and confirm the participation. Phase 4, data collection. For planning accuracy, our timeline assumes the full set of 20 participants. Each semi-structured interview will last 45 to 60 minutes, conducting interviews within standard 9 to 5 schedule, and allowing 10-minute breaks between participants means the team can complete all interviews over 3 full days. Phase 5, data analysis. Data analysis will follow reflective thematic analysis, including full transcription. Research shows that analyzing a single 1-hour qualitative interview typically requires around 8 hours. With 20 interviews, this totals approximately 160 hours of analysis. With a 4-person research team, distributing this workload makes it feasible to complete the full analysis within 1 work week. Now, phase 6, the write-up. The writing process will begin as early as week 1, guided by the proposal. Following data analysis, the team will spend 3 full weeks drafting the final report, integrating findings, refining themes, and preparing conclusions. This timeframe also allows for revisions and editing to ensure a polished final submission.